We're just two lost souls swimming in a toilet bowl. Year after year, swimming around that same old brown, dirty little ring inside the stainless toilet bowl. A fish and a human turd. That's right, in a stainless steel toilet inside of an inmate cell on a cell block in a southern prison. This is the type of story that the news media don't even know about. This is the type of story that you won't find on Oprah's show. This is the type of story that you're going to get on the Pen and The Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube. Back to the turd and the fish in the stainless steel toilet. He sat down in a prison toilet in the middle of the night to drop a deuce, half asleep like a kid nodding. On a car ride home from the dentist. Yeah, he drops his dingy boxers to his ankles. There's no reason to take one pant leg out the pant leg because he's in a one-man cell and he doesn't have to worry about anybody attacking him. He gets ready, places his warm buttocks on a cold stainless steel toilet. Ooh, he jumps. It's cold. But he sits back down. After a few minutes, things warm up nicely and that state food's hard to get out in the middle of the night. That mystery meat, but it's quiet. It's easy to poop at night. You don't have to worry about anybody walking past the cell nonstop like guards and orderlies. And he felt something splash. Water. It hit his buttocks. It was cold. But something happened. He didn't drop a turd yet. Welcome to the cell block, where an ordinary crap on an ordinary night turns into an episode of Oz. Yeah, a case so profound that it had the whole cell block on some conspiracy theories for weeks. A story so unusual and unique, it deserves to be on Ripley's Believe It or Not. How did a fish get into Project Pete's toilet? This is the story. Project Pete was what I would call an ordinary inmate. You know, in on some ordinary type charges. What do I mean by ordinary charges? You know what you mean. You run of the mills, possession with intent to distribute, burglary, car theft, you know, just average crimes. And he was also in the cell block for what I would call an ordinary and average infraction or offense. You know what I mean? The random stuff. Possession of contraband. You know what I mean? Sneaking sugar or salt out of the kitchen. And that type of stuff will get you put in the cell block. Can you imagine? Hey, man, where'd you get that sugar from? The kitchen. Oh, yeah, you going to the hole. The hole? Yeah, the dungeon. For what? You ain't supposed to take no sugar out the kitchen. It was my sugar on my tray. Yeah, but you can't take it out the kitchen. As soon as you take it out the kitchen, that's theft. Dang. So Project Pete's like, so now I got a theft charge? Put your hands behind your back. And you're getting disrespect too. He's like, I'm getting disrespect? Yeah, aggravated disobedience now. Why am I getting aggravated disobedience? And the officer tells him, because you used to ask too many questions. And Project Pete's like, man, I just needed some sugar for my coffee tomorrow morning before I go work in your field. Second time that you getting an aggravated disobedience. So Project Pete, not to be mistaken for the rapper Project Pat, who actually turned his life around and he doesn't rap about project stuff no more. He preaches the gospel. So kudos to Project Pat for turning his life around and becoming from Project Pat to Preacher Pat. Anyway, back to Project Pete. So Project Pete gets brought to the cell block and you know, it's one-man cells. It's in DeQuincy, Louisiana. There are also two-man cells and there are one-man cells. It's upstairs and downstairs. It's dependent on what's going on. If the cell block is full, they'll fill them up with 2 people per cell. If it gets really, really full, they might shove 3 people in the cell. But if the prison is calm and a lot of people aren't acting up and there's not a lot of people, then even in a 2-man bunk, you can still end up with your own cell like Project Pete did. Well, Project Pete was a quiet dude. The cell block, you know, in the dungeon, it can get kind of crazy, especially during the middle of the day and at certain parts of the night. Around 1, 2 in the morning, things start getting quiet. And that's when people like Project Pete, who likes his quiet, find a way to lean by the bars and hold that book like this and read your book. Because, you know, it's hard to read the book when you lay with your head toward the wall and your face right at the toilet because it's kind of dark back there. But they don't shut the lights off down the tier. They use those lights on. So if you lean back enough, you can get enough light to where you can read your novel or your book. So Project Pete would read until he fell asleep peacefully. You might be asking, well, what was Project Pete reading? Well, I don't know. The regular stuff that finds its way up and down the cell block. Louis L'Amour, John Grisham, Stephen King, and Iceberg Slim. Yeah, the regular. So whatever he was reading, he read it, and he fell asleep. And somewhere in the middle of the night, probably around 3 or 4 in the morning, Project Pete wakes up and he has to take a crap. He has to take a deuce. That's right. Sometimes in prison, people like to poop at nighttime when it's quiet. I used to like to go to use the crapper in the dormitories around this time because it's the only time you're going to get peace. Try crapping in the morning or right after chow. It's chaotic. Anyway, back to Project Pete. So Project Pete gets up, and as you already know, he sits on the toilet. And when the water splashes, it spooks him and he jumps up. But when he jumps up, you got to picture, Project Pete was just straining, trying to get out that state food. He was trying to get out those greens, those uncut greens that are cooked. And when you eat them, they like leather, collard greens. You know what I mean? You chew them up. It takes a while to digest them. It's not like regular collard greens. So he's trying to get that out because you got bugs in it and everything. You're going to get your protein. They ain't cleaning that stuff like talking about. They grow it in the field, clean in the kitchen, and you put it in your mouth and eat it if you want to live. And in the cell block, there ain't no wham whams and zuzus in the dungeon. You just get your state tray and that's it. Anyway, he was straining. When he jumped up, because he was scared, he didn't know what splashed, because he didn't poop yet. And so when he jumps up, his heart just goes boom, 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 bumps out his chest because he didn't know what just touched his booty. And when he jumps up, he drops his deuce all over the concrete floor. That's right. Bam, shower slide. Whoop, he slips. Bam, he falls. He got turds and poop up and down his body. Now the whole cell block's awake. And now dudes are starting to say, man, what's going on? Say, Brian, what's going on? You all right? What happened, man? And people don't know what's happening yet because they're just starting to wake up. And listen, not everybody's asleep. I tended to stay up late. I used to pace myself back and forth. Look, this is me. Boom, 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 boom. Turn back around. Boom, 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 boom. Turn back around. Boom, 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 boom. Up and down my cell block. And I did it quietly, even with my shower slides. Because a lot of dudes, they drag their shower slides on the ground. And when you drag your shower slides on the ground, it sounds like this. And so if you drag your shower slides, that's enough to get on dudes' nerves. I've seen many of ball fights behind people dragging their shower slides on the ground. So I just learned to lift my shower slides off the ground quietly when I pace back and forth because I used to like to walk and think. And so I did that in my cell. So now people are waking up. They're like, oh man, what's going on, man? Somebody trying to get somebody? Somebody trying to... The first thing that happens in prison when somebody yells is immediately everybody thinks automatically that somebody's getting their booty or their manhood taken. That's just the way it goes. Right? So once dudes start to settle down and realize that it was Project Pete, everybody knew Project Pete and he was in a one-man cell. And they knew at that point, okay, cool. Nobody down the T is getting their booty taken. Let's figure out what's going on. And so that's all of a sudden when you hear Project Pete, he like, they got something in my cell with me. They got something in my, say, y'all say, whoa, they got something in my cell. Whoa, they got something in my cell. And dude's like, man, what's up, Pete? What they got in your cell? He said, they got a ghost up in here. It's in my toilet. They said, man, Pete, you got a ghost in your toilet? And Pete's like, yeah, they got a ghost in my toilet. Man, what you doing? And Pete's racking the shell. He's racking the balls back. Ba, 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 ba. Smell like poo now up and down the tier because he done smeared it all over himself. It's all over the ground. All right, just give me a second, y'all. Just let me take my breath. I'm getting flashbacks. I'm smelling poo, and I'm hearing crazy conversations. I'm all of a sudden back in the cell block as I'm telling a story. And I just need to take a deep breath, all right? I need to ponder and get my thoughts together. It's chaotic on the cell block, okay? Now I'm remembering this back to reality. Anyway, so dudes are asking Pete, they're like, say, Project Pete, what you got down there, man? They got a ghost in there? He's like, man, they got a ghost in my toilet. They said, how you got a ghost in your toilet, Pete? What happened? What happened? So everybody's trying to figure out what happened. So all of a sudden, the guards are saying, y'all hold that noise down there. Y'all hold that noise down there. Sometimes the guards don't respond immediately in the cell block, in the dungeon, because dudes are in their cells and the guards are used to hearing this chaotic atmosphere all the time. So they're not just going to jump up and come running down the tier to see what's going on every time people start making noises, even in the middle of the night when noises might be a little bit less common than they usually are. So now people are asking Project Pete, what's happening, man? What happened? Things are calming down. He's like, oh man, I got shat all over myself, man. I just slipped. They said, man, why you poo on the, they're not using the word poop, but they're like, why you pooped on the floor, man? He's like, I didn't, man. Something's in my toilet. And so dudes are starting to scream. They got a dude on the top tier. He's like, man, they got a Leviathan in that man toilet. They got a Leviathan. I was just reading the Bible last night, man. It talk about the Leviathan, bro. The Leviathan back for y'all, man. The Leviathan. And everybody like, ain't no Leviathan in there, man. Pete, go look in your toilet. He's at the cellar. He's like, I ain't looking. I felt it. It splashed. Whatever was in that toilet splashed water, and it touched Pete's butt to where I said, we're at this point that we're at now, to where this man got poop all over his body, and he's at the tier at the front of his cell by the bars, hugging him like this, trying to get somebody's attention, such as a guard, to come and help him and get him up out of that cell where there's a haunted thing inside his toilet bowl. So finally, everybody's calming down, and they finally got Project Pete where he's a little bit calm. And so dudes are like, all right, Pete, you good? And Pete's like, whoa, I'm good. And they're like, you good? He said, whoa, I'm good. They said, all right, Pete, look, you got to go check that toilet out. You heard me? And dudes are like, I say? And Pete's like, whoa, I say? And they say, I say, go look in the toilet, Pete. Go look in the toilet. And dudes are now checking their toilets. You can hear toilets flushing up and down the tier. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. I even go flush my toilet. Whoosh. Don't nobody want whatever's in Pete's toilet coming in their toilet. So dudes are checking their toilet. Dudes are running the faucets. You hear water being ran out the faucets everywhere. And everybody's like, don't drink the water. Say don't drink the water. They got something in Pete water. Then people will put something in our water. You heard me? And dudes like I say. And now they on the telephone on the horn. The horn is where the vents connect from this tier to the other tiers. And now dudes are waking dudes up on the other tiers. And dudes are waking up. What y'all got going on over there? What y'all got going on over there? And dudes like, I say. And they say, I say. You heard me? He's like, yeah, you heard me? They got something in the water. Dude said, what y'all say? They said they got something in the water. And it's going back and forth, up and down the tiers, chaotic. You can't hear nothing. Ain't no guards moving. You know what I mean? It's a conspiracy. Pete still didn't go look in the toilet. And now dudes are coming up with all kind of theories. That dude on the top tier, he's back there yelling to the other dude, they got that Leviathan, you heard me? They got that Leviathan, you heard me? Dude say, what you say, bro? He said, I say they got that Leviathan in the toilet, you heard me? They got that Leviathan. And dude's like, say, bro, y'all tripping, huh? He said, nah, bro, Pete got that Leviathan. That's Project Pete, man. He got that Leviathan in his toilet, you heard me? And dudes is going back with all kind of theories. Other dudes are like, man, Pete's tripping, man. He just tired, bro. He delusional, man. You know what I mean? And other dudes like, man, I've been on Pete crazy. You heard me? I've been on Pete crazy. And you can still hear Pete. He ain't let go of them balls. He's sweating and poop. Finally, after much chaos, didn't a single guard come down any single tier to give anybody any comfort. Finally, no orderly. They usually send orderlies down too to check and make sure things are okay. Finally, Pete says, I'm gonna go look. I'm gonna go look. And they're like, Pete, go look in that toilet. Pete steps around all his feces that's now on the ground, and he looks in that toilet, and they say, what you see, Pete? What you see, Pete? And I'm in my cell, man. This is like the most interesting entertainment that I had in a while. And I'm in the cell. I'm kind of looking, because you can see a little bit. Split down the cell tier. You looking down there trying to see what's going on. Dudes got little mirrors that they got snuck back there. You know what I mean? Trying to look. You know what I mean? Everybody's trying to see what's going on down in Pete's cell. And Pete said, oh man! They're like, what it is, Pete? It's a Leviathan. The dude in the top tier says it's a Leviathan. The dude said, what it is, Pete? What it is? It's a ghost. Man, you splash what that is, man. You poo. And finally Pete says, they got a fish in my toilet. And dude's like, what? He said, they got a fish in my toilet. And all of a sudden, you can hear the dude on the top that said Leviathan. That man done shot a Leviathan. I'm telling y'all, that man done shot a Leviathan. I'm telling y'all. So dude's like, what you mean, Pete? And Pete's like, man, they got a fish in my toilet, man. They got a fish in my toilet. And dudes is like, man, Pete, you tripping, bro. You tripping. And some dudes are like, man, come on, Pete, get it together, bro. Calm yourself down, Pete, man. What's really going on? And All of a sudden, that's when you hear the guards say, all right, y'all, hold that down there, hold that noise. And they're like, you hold the noise, Sarge, come down here. Pete they got a fish in these people toilet, man. They got a fish in the people toilet, you heard me? And the guard's like, y'all shut up down there, hold that noise. They're like, you hold the noise, Sarge. And finally, the Sarge comes walking down. He got the orderly with him. And the orderly's laughing, like where the orderly came from, why he's chuckling. You know what I mean? He's laughing. The guards kind of got a little, a grin on his face, and they walking down to Pete. They're like, what you got in there, Pete? Oh, man. They're like, oh, man, you done pooed all over yourself, Pete. And Pete's like, oh, man, I need to wash myself. Let me get that shower. They're like, and he's like, rack back cell, whatever cell Pete was in, rack back cell 12. Man. Pete comes up out that cell. He got the whole tears just stinking. Dude, like, Pete, you good? Pete, man, Pete, go to the shower. And the officer looks at the orderly. He says, get some soap to that man. Pete goes in the shower. He turns the shower on. He's up there showering, cleaning. Dudes are asking, yelling. So they got another orderly come back. They come back with a bowl. Dude, we got a bowl out the kitchen. They go in Pete's cell. And dudes are now asking, say, Cap. That's what they call the officer on charge. And now the captain comes back there. Everybody's back there. They literally had a goldfish in Pete's toilet. A goldfish. You know what I mean? Couple inches long, a little small goldfish. It was in his toilet. Now dudes are like, man. And so the guards are coming back there. The cap's like, man, what kind of stuff y'all got going on my cell block tonight, boys? And they like, man, say, Cap, that man done shot a fish. He said, I done seen it all, man. I done seen dudes hang themselves back here. I done heard ghosts back here. I done heard hauntings. I done dudes getting their booty taken. But I ain't never heard no goldfish inside no state toilet. And they said, man, say, Cap. He's like, say, man, y'all need to calm down, man. That man getting cleaned up. Pete gets cleaned up. You know what I mean? The orderly comes down the thing, and he's got a bowl with the goldfish in the bowl. And as he's showing everybody, let me see. And so dudes from the top, he didn't bring it to the top. He just, as he brought it down tier, there was a handful of dudes. I'm on the lower tier too, so I'm toward the back. I seen the goldfish. There was a handful of us that got to see. There was literally a goldfish that they took out of Project Pete's toilet bowl. So this went on for weeks. People trying to figure out what happened and how the fish got in there. And they were saying that the fish came up through the back sewage. In other words, when you flush the toilets, they got that suction, whoosh, whoosh. Somehow or another, a bird or something had dropped it in the pipe system, or a rat had it, and it got in and it got sucked back up into Pete's toilet. And so that was the common belief throughout the entire cell block. But they had another dude who worked on a couple of dudes who were plumbers. And they said, man, I don't think that's really possible that a goldfish can work his way up the sewage and into the clean water like that. Well, and some dudes were like, say, y'all, on the real though, man, can't that plumbing come from the clean line? And they're like, I guess it's possible that the goldfish came through the clean water line, right? And then came in through, but then the question then was, then how did it come through the clean water line, which is at the top of the toilet bowl, and it's where the clean water goes, where you brush your teeth and all that, and how did it, maybe it flipped and flopped and wind up in Pete's toilet? So, like I said, there's all kind of conspiracies. Come to find out, everybody's down the walk and it's week later. We're talking to other officers, and the other officers had admitted that they literally, one of the officers, they had a ditch out in front of prison. And later that day, he scooped up a little goldfish he saw in one little puddle, and he brought the goldfish inside the prison. And when he was walking down to do his count, when Pete fell asleep and nobody paying attention, he reached in Pete's cell through the bars, and he tossed the fish, and it splashed in Pete's toilet. Well, nobody seen it. Nobody was the privy. And when Pete went to take a crap, that's when the fish splashed. And when the fish splashed, before Pete dropped the deuce on it, you know what I mean? That's when all the chaos ensued. And so that's why the guards didn't come down. They were in the front, chuckling and laughing, listening to this whole thing. See, the guards have to find a way to pass the time too. And they were doing what you call josing. So they were passing their time, laughing and joking and cutting up with the inmates. Listen, guards can be just as chaotic and silly as inmates. They doing time too. So during their shift that night, they got their laugh off. And even the orderly come to find out he knew about it, because the officer said, man, I put that goldfish in that dude's toilet. And the orderly's like, yeah, for real? He's like, yeah, it was a whole ordeal. And Pete was the kind of guy, he was a mild-mannered dude. So even though that happened to him and he wound up with shot all over, he just took it in good stride. It was just a good laugh that Pete was able to probably still tell to his family to this very day, that he thought he pooped a goldfish. And who knows, it might have been a baby Leviathan. But that's the type of story you get on a Pen and The Shank. The most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube. Give me a like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you know when I drop some of these crazy stories and crazy videos, you won't miss it. and share this video. Let's get the word out for the Pen and the Shank so we can blow this channel up. Let's get it.